correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm Steve. Over there is Steve.
Hello.
And over there is an honorary Steve.
Yeah, I was
Hello.
just going to say that.
Welcome to the Three Steve podcast. We've changed it.
It's the all Steve hour. All Steve, all the time.
The voice y'all are hearing is our friend Brett Bowen from Studio 404 Games and assorted other madness. He's joining us for this episode, and he's got some things to talk about. But before we get into all that, Steve, we want to do our little shout out for another podcast here on the D20 Radio Network.
Yeah, we do, and I'm going to throw it right back to you because you got it right in front of you.
I do, actually. I have it called up right on the screen in front of me.
I am terrible with the name of their podcast. I love those guys. I'm terrible at it.
Well, I think it's the longest podcast name on the network.
Yes.
It is the Wondrous Atlas of Creation's Destiny, which, you did hear a couple months back. We had the host of that show on with us talking about Exalted, which is what they do on their show. They're really, really entertaining. They get really in-depth on Exalted. And quite frankly, they scare me in how much they know about it.
But that's what White Wolf does best.
There's a spaceship that is also a god.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Exalted does some cool stuff.
And it's a really, really good show. Rials and Aramithius are the names of the hosts. Very, very fun people. They also have that wonderfully fun British accent.
Yes.
That's where they're from. But you can find that show and others. Just go to the D20 Radio Network page, click on the podcast tab. You can also check out the blog and also the other fun stuff that's there. So that's all that.
Yeah.
And as we Brett has become an honorary Steve this time because it is his third appearance on the show, and I still haven't made a silly sounder for all that. I suppose I should, but
Make
I've been thinking about it for a while, as it's been, I've been at the 2 mark for some time now. And I've been thinking about, how would I introduce the show? It's like, hi, everybody, my name is Steve, and have the voice be completely different than every other show. And with me tonight is Steve and the other Steve.
You remember the time we made Hooli intro the show?
Oh, yeah, that's right. But at least he's, been on a podcast before, so he knows what he's doing.
Well, you have too. That's how you got to be an honorary Steve.
No, he's run a podcast. I've run television from behind the camera. Very different.
Potato. Potato, tomato, something. I don't know. All right. So what are we going to talk about this week, Brett? Because to make a long story really, really short, my week has been chaotic as all heck. Mm-hmm. Steve just got his voice back, and so calling you was initially a last-ditch effort of, oh crap, who can I talk to, and we'll figure something out. But as it turns out, you have a very good reason to come talk to us.
I do. Studio 404 and I have a great announcement that we've been waiting for a very long time to say, which is that our product, Anarchy in Dragon City, which is a cyberpunk fantasy setting that we've been putting together for many years now, is slated to release on Cyber Monday, which is November 27th of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
We've been building this since just before the pandemic started, as when we really launched the ideas, when we were listening to Opti and his Neo-Anarchist podcast talking about the Shadowrun world and how awesome the world and setting is, and then found out exactly how problematic the Shadowrun rules are. So my wife and I were doing a lot of driving to go here and there and the other place to get to shuffle our daughter around. And we started talking while she was sleeping, and we're like, we have this gaming company. We could write up our own setting and set it up to the Genesys rules and make it work in the game system that we love the most. So we started coming up with this amazing world that is not much unlike our own, but far-flung future where a magical apocalypse has occurred. Ley lines sprung up, and this wave of magic devastated the world, killed millions of people, and mutated people, which killed even more people, into these different species that are all magically affected. And it also mutated a bunch of the animals, either merging them together or changing them into like creatures of myth and legend that then challenged humans' stance at the top of the food chain.
Cool.
Until, in the particular case of the person telling the story at the beginning of the book, a literal dragon comes down and shelters them from the storm and brings them to a place to start to rebuild, which the dragon then helps them to do. But he claims the entire place as his territory. So now you're living under a potentially immortal, draconic, benevolent dictator, I'm sure. In this particular situation, the walls are very high. They're all warded to protect you from the ongoing magical storm that is still raging outside. So no one wants to go outside if they can help it. But the walls are hard to expand. So you're starting to deal with overcrowding and overpopulation and resources becoming scarce. But at the same time, the technology is advancing so much that people are getting replaced with automation or drones, stuff like that, that make it less necessary for humans to actually do the job, which challenges even more unemployment rates, which leads us to the players in the current generation kind of have a lack of options. So they need to start freelancing to do odd jobs around the city. So they become what's known as lancers, freelancers, that buck the system, possibly stick it to the corpse, defend their territory from gangs and such like that, and try to make themselves and their area, their particular neighborhood, a little bit better. That's the very long elevator ride to the Skyrise elevator pitch.
So it's sort of a post-apocalyptic in a way. Is a term that's kind of in vogue of late, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's sort of the recovery after the apocalypse has already occurred, and now we're dealing with that having, the bloom having worn off the rose a little bit, perhaps. Right.
It's very much sort of like, in that regard, yes, it's post-apocalyptic, but the problem is still ongoing. Sort of like what happened, as most people understand, The Walking Dead. The first season, or the first couple of books, because I read the books first, it was very much about dealing with zombies and learning how to survive the zombies and find a place to shelter up and maybe rest, find food, stuff like that. A couple of seasons later, the zombies are a terrain feature. Everyone knows how to deal with them now, and everyone has had to deal with them in one way or another. Pretty much most people are comfortable with killing a zombie, but they're still dealing with resources, which means they're competing against other people. So it becomes much more the conflict between people and dealing with those problems, with the feature of, if you go out not properly prepared, you have to deal with zombies trying to kill you.
Cool. Yeah, I actually, for whatever reason, I never got checked out The Walking Dead. Never really wanted to. I know a lot of people love it, and I'm not trying to ban it or anything. It's just never really appealed to me.
In my opinion, I think it started very strong, and the show also started strong, but it also started to divert from the books a lot fairly early on. I remember there was one actress who had a fight with the director, I think, and therefore was fired or left the show, whichever. But she was actually a major character that lasted for much longer than she was in the show for. So they had to alter some things. But that not being here or there, one of the big features that I'm trying to go for here, that I'm emulating, Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark had a whole bunch of things that introduced of mechanics and concepts and ideas that helped the heist genre in role-playing games. The big one is you can't leave town. If you get into trouble, you can't just skip town and ditch the heat that's coming for you. You have to stay somewhere in the city and deal with it one way or the other. And that really appealed to me because I was always like, okay, so we just leave. We go into the countryside for a little while, let it simmer down while we're not there. And then we go back into town and do it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't here.
Yeah, well, I kind of sense, I know Phil, one of your partners in Studio 404, is a big Riffs fan, or has been. I feel some Riffs in there, probably some Judge Dredd.
Yep.
obviously, you mentioned the Shadowrun kind of cyber fantasy kind of, everyone's going to look at that and say Shadowrun because it's kind of the granddaddy game of the genre.
Agreed. Although in that regard, Rifts is very similar. People call Rifts much more of a kitchen sink because of everything you got in it, but it also has cyberware. It also has magic. So yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. So, I mean, like, but I'm also, I've gotten to playtest this with you a couple times. And I got to say, I really, really had fun. The setting feels appropriately grimy and slimy and dirty, but not overly oppressive. You think that's fair, Steve? I know you've gotten to play it once or twice at least.
I got to play it once, but that was over I think it was 2 sessions, whatever we ended up doing. I think that's such a great setting. It is. I completely agree with you, though. It is that like grimy, but it's the feeling of walking into the Apple store, understanding that you're getting robbed. It is that exact. It is, man. It is gorgeous in here. It's too bad that this company is corporalistic evil, right? Like,
nice.
I feel like that's a compliment to a cyberpunk type genre game.
Yeah,
it really is.
I will say that one challenge that I had when I was first doing playtesting is like, okay, the setting is supposed to be oppressive and you always get screwed over and this, that, and the other thing. I remember having like a session 0 kind of check in with the players of like, all right, the setting is going to screw you. It is supposed to be oppressive and horrible, and things are not going to work out the way you want them to. I, the GM, am your friend, and I'm going to be a fan of the PCs and everything like that. I want to see you do well, but bad stuff is going to happen.
I think there's a lot of people who have trouble differentiating that. And it's not an easy concept to necessarily understand because, I think you get that in the, like I love to play horror games. Why? Right. Like you're going to get mutilated and die or whatever. Well, yeah, but the road getting there is entertaining as heck.
Oh, yeah.
It's also a matter of like how long it lasts.
I completely agree with that sentiment, not just for your game, but that's a lot of games. Trying to explain to people that, I'm sorry, but the setting is mean and nasty and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And to admit, that's sort of the central pitch around like Morkborg and Cyborg is that like, but I love that you guys are taking, so not saying that you're inverse of Cyborg, but looking at you guys next to like your contemporaries, like Cyborg, I loved that game.
Yeah.
You guys that game is dirty, slimy, gross, nasty. Like you guys are a little bit more on I feel like Anarchy and Dragon City is more on the players could make a difference, but it's not going to matter, right?
Right.
You hit that more cyberpunk balance of realistic optimism.
Yes, thank you. That's what we're really going for. Like one part of that is a focus of it is the cause chart, very similar to the duty mechanic in Age of Rebellion, Star Wars. I really liked that mechanic of it was always giving you it had a chance of giving you a reward just for playing, but it also reinforces the feel of you have something inside of you that gives you a drive, that is something you can actually make a difference of, that you want to make a difference of. And yeah, one of those is like vigilante justice. So for all you fighters out there that really just want to bust some heads, you can do vigilante justice and do that just fine. But other people are like, they want to make sure that everybody gets a hot meal, gets a roof over their head, that they have enough education, or maybe they get employed, stuff like that. There's all sorts of other ways you can help the community to make your area, your friends better, which was sort of there were a couple of key changes that I wanted to make from the normal way of doing things in a cyberpunk game. Like one of them was money for cyberware. It caused this really weird system. Like if you go and play Shadowrun, especially on any of the community play games, they'll have this system for like exchanging karma, which is their XP, for cash. Because depending on which way you're going, you either want more karma or you want more cash. because cash gets you cyberware and karma can get you skills, magic, stuff like that. I have played some of these games as part of my research, and I found a couple of loopholes in the said systems. And I was like, nope, we're not going to do that. Everybody gets XP. And that's how you get your power up. Everybody's working on one single track. So we created a whole bunch of talents that are you get this piece of cyberware working for you, which made it much easier to balance said things against other talents. And you don't have to spend your money on that. You can spend it on gear, equipment, or your community.
No, that makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, because on some level, as much as I love the setting in the world, like Cyberpunk 2020, Cyberpunk Red becomes a churn for cash.
Yep.
Which is, in a way, part of the dystopian over-corporateness that it's trying to portray.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also get very tiring in a game context.
Right. The other problem that I ran into playing a cybernetic character in one of the Shadowrun games was, it's a good thing I practically went into becoming an accountant when I was in high school. It was either go into film or go into accounting. And I decided to go with film instead. But I still have a lot of those math skills that help out in accounting. Good thing, too, because I'm basically doing accounting for my money in Shadowrun. It was a ridiculous amount of cash.
So, and look, the setting is awesome. You know, I've played in it a couple times with you running the games. Yeah, it's great.
I will not get tired of hearing that.
Do you want to talk? I know you have some things you've done with what you're going to be putting out with the game that are a bit beyond what most creators are putting out for Genesys. And there's one process in particular that I don't know that you even would necessarily take credit for it, although you're the first person I've seen do it in Genesys.
Oh, okay.
That I think is just a good thing. So I don't know how much of that you want to get into, you know, as far as the features of the game, in addition to just the setting. I mean, the setting is cool, and I know you have some plans for that down the road, which we can get into at some point too. But
yep. I think you're talking about the fact that we have the careers and specializations, including specialization trees.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking about?
That is one of the things I'm talking about, yes.
Okay. Yeah, basically we ran into the problem of we knew we needed a lot more talents. We didn't know what we needed those talents to do. But we also knew that from the start, we wanted to do talent trees and the specializations that go with them, partially because we knew we wanted to emulate. Have you seen the TV show Leverage?
I have. I liked it, but I have trouble finding it. I can't remember where it's streaming.
I believe Hulu is the one putting out the new, the relaunch.
Okay, I didn't even know there was a relaunch. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think most of the actors came back to do a relaunch. I haven't caught it yet because of doing this instead. But yeah, the archetypes of thieves that Leverage introduced or made more publicly aware are the careers that we decide to go with. But then there's the angle of, okay, what if you were someone with magic who was a grifter? What would that look like? Okay, what if you were somebody with cyberware that was a grifter? What would that look like? How would that be different? What would be the same? Stuff like that. And if you didn't have either of those, so what are you now? But you're still a grifter. You can still do these things. What's different? So like for that one as an example, you have grifters who can become, with no enhancements, they are con artists. With magic, they are shapeshifters. So they can change their appearance and appear as other people. And as with technology, they are ghosts, as in Ghost in the Machine, because they have the various tools and techniques to trick the computer into allowing them to do stuff that they shouldn't want to do. Or to, okay, yep, your readout now says this. So this person, or it's going to give me a benefit against the person that I'm lying to get past this guard post.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. So that also led to the challenge of, I know that there's different opinions about doing career talent trees. So we also introduced a couple of talents to allow you to play the game in the pyramid scheme as well. The pyramid build method. But you know, really for Anarchy and Dragon City, pyramid scheme works just fine. So that led to a couple of things of like, instead of these things innately occurring to this career, like you picked a magic career, okay, you get the magic trait now, no problem. We instead made up talents that are the magic trait and explaining how that works. So if you do the pyramid method, you can just buy that talent, which is of course a first level talent, so you can have it right off the bat, and then go from there.
Well, I'm going to say I really, really like the fact that you did the talent trees. And I know I've told you this, and I've said it before, whether I've said it on the show or not. I think a Genesys setting can benefit a lot from well-executed talent trees.
Agreed.
Because I think, while the freeform creativity of the pyramid system is great, the talent trees are essential to Star Wars, because what they do in Star Wars is they outline the archetype you're going for. They don't tell you your character has to be this, this, and this, but they give you a clear archetype to work off of, and that defines a setting so much more, because like you're looking at that and going, oh, these are the type of people that live in this world, as opposed to here's a pile of stuff, build your own character. Which is fun, but even as someone who's, I would say at this point, I'm moderately familiar with the system, can be daunting.
Absolutely.
I absolutely despise talents in Genesys, and I know that's blasphemy, but I don't care. I think the talent trees are a million times better. I have run so many characters now that I'm like, well, my current character, I need to buy talents for him. I have like almost no talents on him because I don't know what to take, and I don't know what's good and what fits my character. And to sit down and pour through the pages and pages and pages, it's give me a tree, give me a list, give me an option. I despise the setup in Genesys as it sits. I'm sorry.
What is it called? The
analysis paralysis.
Kind of, yes.
That's basically what it is.
Yep. The pyramid is requiring a good deal, especially the more every new book that comes out adds to the options. So you need to have that much more system mastery of knowing what all the options are before you do your investment. I mean, like just getting a point of toughness or a point of grit is not a bad thing. And most characters should do it for just the 5 XP that it costs for a tier 1. It's the build up over time that might be more challenging, daunting, or a bit more of a decision-making process. But for the pick up and go, for introducing a new player to a game, I think the talent trees are a huge benefit because it's just, these are the 20 talents you have to worry about until you decide to buy a new tree. But we can deal with that later. Also, if you're like Steve, you can say, you know what? I'm not going to play the talent game. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play a skill game. Genesys is now a skill-based system for me. There are no talents. And you can do that. You just choose the right career and specialization that gives you the discounts on the skills that you want to do, and you're done. Now you just spend your XP on all your skills. I know that years ago, back at, I want to say like Gamer Nation Con 2 or 3, I met somebody who had that exact same mindset. Like, talents are a waste of XP. I just want to get my key skill up to rank 5 as soon as possible.
Yeah, I wouldn't go, for me, and I'm not discounting Steve's opinion here either. I wouldn't say that the talents are a waste, but having the pyramid, it's kind of like, well, what do I want? And then you have, okay, how does this talent from this book, does that apply in the setting my GM's running me in? Because it's their own game, and do they want me to use this? Do they have, we could even be talking about some of the books that are the Foundry books that are pretty widely recognized as the next best thing to official, stuff like Ready Flight.
Yep.
Which, like, Keith does amazing work and has written a lot officially as well. But you know what I'm saying? It's still technically a fan-made product.
Right.
And so at what point, what do you want to have? What does your GM want to deal with? Do they have the book you're pulling from, et cetera, and so on?
Right.
And it becomes the splat game that D&D 3.5 turned into.
I was just thinking that. That's right.
Yep.
Are we using swords and sorceries in this game? No, you're not. Put those books down.
And if you don't mind me saying it, I will say the one thing that I've been excited about since you showed me a manuscript a long time ago, is the milestoning XP.
Oh, yes.
I love that.
That is a key thing that I came up with because at this point, most of my gaming is like a work day evening, maybe 4 hours long. And in the double-edged sword of having things that are per encounter or per session is really the big problem. If it's something that's per session and you have a 2 or 3 hour session, that has a vastly different power scale than if it's a 6 hour session or longer that you get to do on a Saturday. So the balancing factor there, as well as many other things, the milestone XP allows you to therefore set certain things are going to reset at this time. It means that if you have a pause in the game because of external factors, you can go back to it where you left off and say, nothing has updated yet. Nothing has changed. Like if you're in the middle of, the big one also was like, okay, you're in the middle of a dungeon crawl. You just earned a whole bunch of XP from killing all these monsters, but you're still down deep in the dungeon. You don't have the chance to go and train, learn new things, stuff like that. Which in the factor of, again, with cybernetic talents, it might not make sense for you to get an upgrade in the middle of a mission or a heist. So by milestoning XP, you prevent that spontaneous advancement that doesn't make any narrative sense in the mission or in the adventure that's going on currently.
Yeah, like it's a simple concept, but I love that you kind of formalized it. And as much as I'm not one to require formalized rules, I like that you did.
No, hard agree on the milestone. Man, the per session stuff is so out of whack. Because if you're not playing 4 hour at least sessions, what are you giving out for XP? 10? Like, what are we talking?
Yeah, at that point, the 5 per hour becomes a little challenged.
Right.
Yeah. And especially if you're playing short sessions, and we've seen this happen in some of the games that we've played in, you can suddenly end up with very high-powered characters, even though you haven't actually done that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the good old thing of, this is especially true of by vampire games back in the day, of, okay, it's been a week, and you've all, because we've done nonstop adventuring and role-playing and stuff like that, you've all now earned 50 XP. You are significantly more powerful than a starting character, et cetera, et cetera. So here we are. How else do I put this? Nope, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm excited for this. And now, do you want to talk about some of the other stuff we talked about before we started the show proper, or are you keeping that under your hat for now?
I'm trying to think of what else we can tease. So the product we came out with many years ago now, Legwork and Larceny, was created with this in mind. Basically, it was like, first I have to come up with how to do a heist properly if I'm going to create a heist-focused setting. And talking with my friend and work colleague over at Fossa Games, Morgan Weeks, that he gave me a nugget of an idea. It's like, this is my rough concept of an idea about how to do heist properly. So take that nugget and develop it into something awesome. And that's where Legwork and Larceny came from. I remember one of the Genesys podcasts, Finding the Narrative, did a review on it at one point. And the funny thing was, one thing that he highlighted was up at the top of the chart of how the GM can spend their hitches to make complications in the heist to go wrong for the PCs. The most costly one on the chart was the employer turns on the players. And that was one specifically called out by Morgan to me in the fact of like, this has to be the most expensive one because they need to have that sense of dread as they're going through the job and nothing goes horribly wrong. Like, this is a cakewalk. What's going on? And then it all goes sour at the end.
That's beautiful. I never thought of it in that context, but yeah, that is 100% right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the fun part of the other big goal is to take the adversarial role or PC versus JM mentality out of the heist or out of trap modules, whatever you want to call them, where the GM can always say, I got you because you didn't say this or didn't say that or whatever. Like, because Genesys is a much more narrative game, Legwork and Larceny encourages it to be, I have these many hitches. I'm spending on these. Your research has shown you that you have 3 or 4 obstacles to overcome, and I have spent my hitches to create a mystery obstacle. So if you can potentially find out what that mystery obstacle is, you can overcome that too, and you get through the heist no problem. And that's a good way that's what I started doing when I was running the modules at GamerNation Con or online and playtesting, just like spell it out for them so that they know what their goals and objectives are. And they were able to do it one way or another. Either they got around it, which is just fine, or they around it, powered through it, or took it out. And some of those were extremely creative methods in which they did it. I can say with good confidence that no 2 teams did it the exact same way in either the heist that I ran in the one module, the lullaby module.
Punch me in the face and throw me out of the van.
That's still my favorite. That is, after they've decided how to do that particular side of it, I then tell the story of Steve saying, I want to punch him in the face. And then, of course, Jesse saying, no, punch me in the face and throw me out of the van.
Oh,
that was beautiful.
It's so good.
It's just one of my favorite moments in gaming history. Like, it is one of my favorite moments in my gaming history of, what did you do? Well, we punched him in the face and threw him out of the van. Why? Well,
because, yeah, Nightingale effect is a whole thing.
It's not, what's the saying? It's not stupid if it works.
Right. It's either stupid or brave, and it depends on how it ends up.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm excited to see, look, I'm really excited to see this product. I'm excited to see what else you do with it too, if you have plans to go further with it.
Mm-hmm. One big thing, you mentioned that this is very Rifts-ish, which is absolutely true, but it's also a lot of Judge Dredd inspired. And I also mentioned the Blades of the Dark angle of keeping you inside the city. What we found, however, was a lot of people's creative juices got flowing when they started thinking about all the weird critters that we could have outside the city. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but we're making a heist game. So we wrote it down as we were coming up with it, but then we kind of refocused and focused on inside the city first. But we think it's very likely that at some point we're going to come up with an expansion for, so you want to go outside the walls. Here's all the various things that are going to happen to you and why nobody does it. Which is not entirely true. There's basically one of the megacorps is the recycling and trash disposal megacorp, Reclamations Incorporated. That part of their job is in fact to go out and scrounge material from nearby destroyed cities and stuff like that and bring it into the city, repurpose it, or if they find really lost relics from the previous world, then they will auction those off or find a buyer somehow to make a profit off. So the Wilds, or some other catchy name that we come up with later, may be a future release product.
Okay, very cool.
That actually brings up one fun thing as well. So, of course, the normal Genesys skill list. And how each of them have a little thing of this is recommended for this setting or that setting, or all settings should have these things. We actually have a little sidebar next to the skills saying obsolete skills, which is to say there's a couple of skills that really are not known by the general populace, namely survival. People don't know how to live off the wilds outside anymore. They know how to live in the city. You can do survival tricks as far as living off living on the streets, finding other ways to find shelter, water, food, and stuff like that. But that's streetwise. That's not survival out in the wilderness.
That's wonderful. That is, but it's like I was talking about with the talent trees, how they enforce the tone of the setting.
Yep.
This is another thing where, and I feel like this is where system design, people say you can play anything in any system. And technically that's true. But this is where some of those tweaks, some of those things that you do make a system better for a given setting or tone than others.
Right.
And in this case, you're modifying a system to enhance its tone, enhance your setting. But I think that was kind of the point.
Yep.
And I don't think, and I don't want to say this, it's going to sound like I'm talking down on people, other designers, and it's not what I'm trying to do. But I think that kind of nuance level, a lot of people just don't consider it. They go, oh, this is cool, and this is cool, and this is cool, so I want all this. And they don't realize that sometimes what you don't have is as important as what you do. Example of this, I remember hearing an interview with, and I'm blanking on the guy's name now, but the guy who designed Mothership. And in the original edition of Mothership, the Ashcan version that was out for a long time, not the one that had the big Kickstarter, there was no stealth skill.
Oh, wow.
Which, on the surface, you think this is a game intended to do space survival horror. Why wouldn't you have a stealth skill?
Okay.
But he explained it in terms that he felt like you saying you wanted to hide under the table should have a narrative impact that you don't have a way to game the system on.
Mm-hmm.
And so he intentionally did not put that skill in the system because he didn't want it mechanized to be able to be gamed.
Interesting. Okay. So you can actually stealth, you just can't do it mechanically.
You can't roll for stealth.
Okay.
There's an old D&D term that kind of relates to this of if you stat it, they will kill it.
Yes. Yep.
And it's kind of the same idea. If you were to put a stealth skill in there, people are going to focus on that and think that is the point.
Right.
And you're missing it.
Yeah, and your monster will fail the roll at just the wrong time.
Yep, and you will curse that they have that ability.
Steve, was it Sean McCoy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't remember where I heard the interview with him. It might have been on Mud and Blood.
Okay.
But I remember him specifically saying that the exclusion of a stealth skill was a conscious choice.
Absolutely. No, that's clever.
And, like I said, I think in a lot of ways that ties into, like what you do. You're excluding survival, you're obsoleting skills to say, look, this is what the world is like.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just feel like that is an opportunity that I think a lot of people don't consider in design. Sometimes what you intentionally don't put in or take out is as important as what you do put in.
Yeah. Part of that is actually because part of the reason that this has taken so long to come out is because mechanics I can do really fast. So I came with a whole bunch of mechanics for how to do magic, how to do combat level hacking, which we call Y-jacking. I came with a handful of talents to imitate cyberware, stuff like that. But then I ran into the wall of, okay, sooner or later I need to follow a narrative. So I need a setting to work it in. We had the bare bones of a setting, so I knew some of the stuff, but we needed more. So then we diverted from the rules and went deep into the setting stuff and developed more and more and more and more. And that really led me to understand that, like, okay, the current generation of, no matter, even if you're particularly old, you've never stepped outside the city as a player. So these things just have not been available to you for your entire life. So they're not skills that are available to you. There are these other things that you're particularly good at, and these other things that weren't available before the storms and before the city, like artificing, which is essentially magical crafting. It's the magical mechanics skill to be able to make up either magic items or potions, one-shot things. One of the favorite things that I came up with earlier on. So one of our magic skills is based on utilizing crystals to essentially create a harmonic field to remove all the chaos of magic, except for this one thing. And that's the spell that you're casting.
Okay.
So I took the idea of, okay, if crystals can have magic, and crystals are also the logical method of working magic, so it's reproducible easier by Megacorps. So there could be products using magically charged crystals. Well, some people are going to want to use these crystals to, again, prevent magic. That's what the entire walls are empowered with, is having, nullifying magic crystals around them to keep the wild magic at bay. Some people want even more than that. So they developed a product called warding tape, which is basically a roll of duct tape with a line of salt down the middle, which creates a ward, a little temporary ward that you can set up by just taping a circle around yourself. Or you put it in the corner along the roof line, the ceiling line of your place, and now, okay, this room is now slightly better worded.
Duct tape and salt is a magic Faraday cage. I love it.
Yep. Because for all those people who are fans of Supernatural, they all know that putting down a circle of salt is a great defense against ghosts and a couple other magical things. But almost every single time, they threw open a window and the salt got blown, and therefore the circle was broken. So therefore, you put it on a line of duct tape, and it's not going to get blown away.
That's awesome.
Another popular one that I've heard is to fill a hula hoop with salt.
Oh, Steve, that has your name all over it.
Yeah, I could see myself. I could see myself doing some things with salt warding and just the fact that it just has to be a circle. It doesn't have to be touching anything in particular.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I'm just gonna. This is now my brain goes to something like, what if you had like a collapsible, like a hose filled with salt, right? Not super full, but you carry it around folded up in your pocket. You get up in some sort of encounter against a mage, and you whip this out and you strap it over his head.
Just carry it around like a lasso.
Sure.
Make a cowboy character and have, all right, I fill this garden hose with salt, and I'm just gonna lasso that guy.
Bolos with a salt-filled hose in the middle.
Oh no!
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah,
no!
That was another angle of it. Is like, this is a poor person's way of taping up and restraining a mage, so they don't pull any shenanigans while you're questing them.
Oh, the fun that
the possibilities.
That's
I'm so excited.
Yes.
So excited. And so this is going to come out Black Friday. No. Not Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I'm so sorry.
Cyber Monday, because it's Cyber Monday, because it's absolutely. We were talked about Black Friday briefly, and we're like, or we do Cyber Monday, and that's just perfect.
So, for those of you trying to put this together, this will drop the Tuesday before Cyber Monday. So this, if all goes as planned,
this recording,
yes, this recording will come out the Tuesday before Cyber Monday. So this will be the last episode that comes out before the game is released.
Mm-hmm. Which is excellent timing. Thank you very much for having me on for that.
Which was completely by accident, I will admit.
Well, I was definitely planning on reaching out to you like at the launch so we could talk about it and have this conversation then. But I love serendipity. She's my favorite muse.
Well, I was just happy because the chaos of life happened, and it's still going to be a challenge to get this one edited because of stuff I have going on, but we'll make it work.
Okay. What else can I throw at you? As another thing to tease, we also have new rules for cyber combat. Because the stuff they put out in Android, I've tried it. I did not like it. I found it required a bit too much in the way of GM prep to run off the cuff, and it is essentially boiled down to rocks, paper, scissors. If you had the right icebreaker when you went into the new section, when you ran into some ice, you pretty much were automatically going to beat that ice. So yeah, it was basically just, and there were only 3 types of ice, so it was rocks, paper, scissors. And if you actually had the icebreaker that counted for all 3 types, I'm not sure what the challenge is anymore. Just don't fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, hacking is such a hard thing to do in a role-playing game.
Yes. Which is partially why it's being called cyber combat, because the other thing that I really missed from the Android method of doing it was doing damage to the other person's avatar, or as I like to call it, it didn't let me punch the other person in the digital face. So that's why it's called cyber combat, because it's basically the combat rules with some slightly different, it's essentially using zones, because that's the different servers that you're in. Mm-hmm. And your adversaries are not just other sysops and their avatars, but also ICE are just adversaries, as opposed to this, wall that you need to ice break through. But the challenge there was also, if you don't want to make it a straight up fight, because if you're getting into a fair fight, something has gone horribly wrong, especially as a digital thief like hackers really are, we had to come up with other ways of like, okay, so you don't want to make it a direct conflict. You want to stealth your way by or sleaze. or maybe you want to impersonate someone who belongs there, so you're deceiving your way, that sort of thing. So we had to come up with a couple of different ways to make someone be able to personalize it to their particular hacker. And I think we did a really good job of that, while also keeping it on the same time frame as a regular structured encounter combat session.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have things going on simultaneously.
Yeah, it's just like it is. There are so many challenges that get into that it's a hard thing to execute well in a game.
Agreed. And I still have yet to play through a session of Cyberpunk Red that actually used the network, the hacking rules there.
Yeah.
Hopefully tomorrow I'll actually get to do it.
Oh, cool.
A friend of mine just started up a game. We had our first session, and we're having our second session tomorrow. So I'm hoping that the hacker gets to have some hacking fun.
Yeah, there were some changes to that I liked. It still feels like it's a bit of a mini game.
Oh, it absolutely is, and that's okay. The big thing is that the mini game isn't taking up its own session with only one person getting to play.
Yeah. I've run the game a little bit, but I've not used the hacking rules yet. Personally. The hacking rules in 2020 were obtuse.
To say the least.
Legendarily obtuse.
Well, although in fairness, they were also designed before the internet that is now ubiquitous was.
Right.
So there comes a little bit of, forgiveness, I think, there, because how do you know what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's a matter of your world building, so you get to say how it happens.
Oh, right.
But yeah, at the same time, it could have been a simpler system that a lot of the hacking games these days are definitely trying to get the hacker in the door to be with the rest of the party. So there's less of the hacker gets his session, and then the rest of the team has their session.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely a big goal that I'm trying for here. And unfortunately, from my little bit of testing with it, it kind of comes down to it's still kind of really there is still a component of the GM has to run it with that in mind, with that goal in mind. Mm-hmm. If you set it up in the fact of like they are the only way to, if you run into a dead end that only the hacker can fix, then you're going to have the hacker get a moment to shine. But if it takes him particularly long to do that, then it can become a only the hacker show.
Mm-hmm.
If there aren't other things for the rest of the party to do at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still a bit of a challenge on the GM, but hopefully the mechanical side is more allowing of such things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, look, I'm really excited to kind of see it and try and digest it, fully. Add it to my list of things that I want to read and do something with, which is very, very long.
I understand.
No, this went to the top of the list. I don't care. This is the next thing I'm running. This is going to be my con game. This is going to be my life for a little while.
I would be very interested to play your con game of this game.
I am, well, I wasn't planning on bringing it to Gamer Nation Con, but here's the official announcement.
There we go. I don't know if I told you to, at the last Gamer Nation Con, I had the pleasure of getting to run this for Sam Gregor Stewart.
Yes.
And he started off the fact of, he'd love to play the game, but generally speaking, he does not care for systems or settings that mix their sci-fi and their magic at the same time. Their sci-fi and their fantasy. Keep your chocolate and peanut butter separate, sort of thing. He had a great time. He was the hitter that you also played, Steve.
Okay.
And he did some amazing things with his guns and the flashback talent and stuff like that. And he walked away from the table really loving this setting, really loving the flashback and legwork and Larceny mechanics. Not just to me, but apparently I then heard from GM Chris that he was still talking about it like an hour later, like in the car or whatever like that. And then later on, I run into him again and we talk about it some more. And he has this moment of deep thought and he leans back and he puts his hand on his chin and he says, I may have to steal that.
That's awesome.
probably the best compliment I'm going to get here.
Oh, but that's cool. That really is.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
that is awesome.
A lot of it is still, a lot of it came from Morgan Weeks, as I said, so it's kind of borrowed. And a lot of it came from inspiration from Blades in the Dark, so that's borrowed. So now we just need something blue and...
Oh, wow.
But yes, Cyber Monday, if I get all my layout done on time and I'm a good little boy, you'll have it in your hot little hands. We haven't figured out a dollar value yet, but it'll be on Drive-Thru RPG. You can go to studio404games.com to find some vignettes that we've written up, a bit piece of our art, links to our social medias where you can see we are planning to chat a bit about our artists and show off more of our art that we had commissioned for us, namely the species that we created and the megacorps have logos that we had someone create. Also, we don't have a date for it yet, but GM Phil is beginning to put together a team to run a live stream recording of a session of Anarchy and Dragon City that we're hoping to at least shoot sometime in December, maybe January, and then get out to air as soon as possible after that.
Very cool.
So if you stay following us on socials, you'll get the heads up on that.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to shout out while we're shouting things out?
I'd like to shout you two out, actually, because I really appreciate you two keep mentioning me or us, the Studio 404 team, just randomly throughout your show. I really appreciate that you're some of our most vocal fans, at the very least, if not the biggest fans. You
got me a gaming hat. Which I have temporarily misplaced, but it's around here somewhere.
I was wondering, I did not see it on your head. And now we're going to go on a tour of Steve's apartment.
Into the void. No, honestly, man, you guys make so many good products. You have some of the best products in Genesys and in anything, and that's why we keep shouting you out. Plus, you're great people. I love talking to you guys. Like, honestly, you are great people.
I really appreciate that. It helps keep the gas going.
Yeah, I'm glad that we can do our part to.
Hey, I recognize you.
There, I found it. It was literally like 8 inches from my hand. Well, I mean, like I said, like Steve said, you make great stuff. You're good people. You're fun to game with.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I was just thinking when you were talking about this, how much Anarchy and Dragon City could be really good for the game that you guys chose not to play at Gamer Nation Con. The other scenario that I had prepped.
The other Cyberpunk Red?
Yes.
Okay.
We
did the mall.
The murder mall.
Yep.
Yes. Which, I mean, we had fun. It wasn't the most cyberpunk overall, but I thought it very, I've talked about it before, very much inspired by like Running Man.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I feel like it is a cyberpunky theme, has a lot of cyberpunk themes to it. Doesn't have the internet and such as much, but no, the other one is, I think I mentioned this to you while we were down there. I stumbled across this movie from the 80s called Black Moon Rising.
Okay.
With Tommy Lee Jones and Linda Hamilton. And it's not at all a cyberpunk movie, but it feels like a great cyberpunk story, if that makes sense.
Yep. The summary is a thief, Quint, is hired by the Justice Department to steal incriminating tapes from a corrupt corporation. Okay, that's plenty cyberpunk already. The tapes vanish when Quint hides them in the back of a hydrodynamic-powered racing car that is stolen by a hot car ring. Okay.
Yeah. Like I say, it's actually not a bad film for when you see the date and see who's in it. You kind of go, well, like Tommy Lee Jones is great as a villain.
Color in his hair.
But
wow. Yeah, it came out in 86 from the look of it.
That sounds right. I actually think it had some inspiration that it inspired some of the Fast and the Furious movies. or scenes in the Fast and the Furious movies.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, Linda Hamilton's in it, so it's already cyberpunky enough for you.
But yeah. All right.
Very, very cool stuff. Well, do you guys want to move into Game of the Week?
Ooh, Game of the Week. Woohoo!
Game of the Week. Game of the Week.
We don't need to explain how this works to you.
No. I, in fact, already have it up and ready now.
Well, since you have it up and ready, go for it.
Oh, okay. So, welcome to Game of the Week, where we, as the Steves, start talking about all the new games that we love or songs that we have encountered recently that we want to promote. And this week on Drive-Thru RPG, they're doing the Teach Your Kids to Game Week. The past couple of years, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she has a couple of 9-year-old twin cousins. And my Christmas present to them for the past couple of years has been to run a game for them of one fashion or another. So last year they were actually old enough to start trying 5th edition D&D, which went over mostly well, until the druid discovered that he wasn't particularly great inside of a building. So got a little frustration there. But right now I'm looking at the Dark Crystal adventure game from River Horse Games. I loved the Dark Crystal growing up. I have not shown it to the kid yet. It might be about her age group now. I don't know if either of you saw the Netflix series that was the prequel to it. It wasn't horrible. It was still using puppets very well. But to a certain degree, they tried to do intrigue and drama with puppets that can't inflect very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of fell flat. But the world building of it, of a time that you didn't really have, but like if you did a bunch of research into the Dark Crystal, you saw a bunch of drawings. There was a book that came out about it that had a bunch of drawings and stencils and sketches of things that were in the world that were either in the backdrop of the movie that didn't get any attention paid to them whatsoever. But he had all this detail on it and the history of the world, stuff like that. You got to see that build up and get some screen time in the show. So for the world building, the show was worth it all by itself. The intrigue, less so.
Fair.
But I am curious if I get them to watch the Dark Crystal and then I run this for them, how well that'll. And it's on sale right now for $22.39.
Aha.
But it looks very pretty, as Dark Crystal is wont to do.
Yeah. I was introduced to that series by a friend who was like, or I say series, but I was introduced to that movie when it was just a movie to a friend that was like, you need to watch this, and then we're going to watch Labyrinth right afterwards.
Yes. Excellent twofer.
And I'm like, okay. Because I was a huge triple feature, make it a triple feature. You watch Neverending Story, you watch Dark Crystal, you watch Labyrinth. I was a huge Neverending Story fan. And they were like, you're going to love this. And I was like, it's too fantasy for me. But I loved Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Awesome. So maybe it's a matter of because both of them had a real world element to it.
I think I don't know. There was something about Dark Crystal that kept pulling me out, and I really don't know what it was. I think it's because Labyrinth is a bit of a darker movie per se, like in tone.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think Dark Crystal was too light in tone for me, and I kept getting pulled out of it. Plus fantasy is not. I run D&D barely. I run it in Eberron for a reason. Like, it's not my setting. It's not my go-to. So I don't know. And I know Labyrinth is pretty hard fantasy, but 90% of that movie isn't. It's weird, creepy wandering, the feeling of loss and dread. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I could expound on this greater.
Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation that is not Game of the Week.
Right. Well, since I've been talking a good bit and my throat's feeling all right, I'll go ahead and take the next slot if that's okay, Steve.
All right.
I have one that's neither a game. That's not really a game. It is a system agnostic, but it's pretty clear what system they're aiming for. Setting document.
Okay.
Maybe series of prompts is a better way of describing it. I'm throwing it in the green room here.
Oh, there we go.
That is the Anomaly Index, File 1. So it's a systemless compendium of modern conspiratorial ideas suitable for contemporary horror and conspiracy role-playing games. It's a bunch of prompts for like Delta Green.
Delta Green,
Call of Cthulhu
Unknown
in general.
Armies.
Unknown Army, yeah. You could do you could use it in Cyberpunk, you could use it in there's so many things you could use this for.
Yeah.
And it's a really I found myself picking it up. It's $4 for the PDF. I picked it up alone just so that like I do plan on running a longer form Delta Green game. When I get into that, I would love to have this for the weeks that I can't come up with what's the monster of the week, Scully? I don't know. Let's crack this open and take a look at it. Like,
yeah. Oh god,
this came out yesterday.
I'm good for that.
We are good for that. This was City and Fox too.
There's
no good reputation.
Exactly. That was the other thing. But this just looks awesome.
Yes, it does.
And it really great art for what it is. Like surprisingly good art for a book that's just a compendium of, stories and prompts and ideas. But
this might work really good with Cold City too, even though that's older.
Cold Cities. I could see this working with like Mutant City Blues.
Yeah.
I could see this working with it works with pretty much any contemporary. Like I could see this working with any, like they say, contemporary, horror or even just intrigue settings. I don't know. I think this is pretty cool, man. So again, that's the anomaly index file 1.
Because half the challenge of that stuff is coming up with the characters and their dynamics and stuff like that. So if somebody's done that much of the heavy lifting, I can put stats on it later.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I exactly. So
yeah, this looks awesome.
I'm curious to see how many more they make. Like this seems to be the first in a series.
Yeah, me as well, because I am all over this stuff. I have been a sucker for some good generic supplemental stuff. And it's so nice to have stuff that's system agnostic. It's just like we didn't build this around a particular system, but we had certain systems in mind.
Well, yeah, it's a genre book. It's not a system book, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. But that is mine. All right, Steve, what do you got?
All right. Well, I have the nemesis of our collective attention span.
Uh-oh.
Oh, dear.
I have a game about squirrels.
I was just sitting outside watching a squirrel. The dog was barking, and I was like, what are you barking at? And then we sat there and watched it for like 10 minutes.
So I found a game. This came out a week ago. It is called The Warriors of Walnut Woods. And I think this is part of that kids gaming sale. It's on sale right now for 50 cents. Normal price is only $2.50.
Oh, that's a
15-page. Says the basic rule system fits on one page. There's rules for creating your own squirrel hero. There's some sample quests. There's tips for running it, as a regular game, like at your local game store, right? Build as a little mini game. Well, one of the things our group has done kind of, be it we're missing a person, whatever, we've started running some of these little 1-page, 200-word games, whatever, and we've had a blast with them, So I saw this and I went, and this the pitch is, it says Walnut Wood is a serene and unassuming habitat where squirrels coexist peacefully. Nevertheless, peace is the delicate balance that is threatened by lurking monsters and evils just beyond the borders of the wood. This is where the West Guard comes into play. This team of skilled heroes is trained to patrol the Walnut Wood and protect its inhabitants from harm. You were a member of the Walnut Guard. You've just graduated from the training academy, blah, 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 blah. Look, you're squirrel cops. What? Like, this is, I mean, it looks sweet and wonderful and peaceful for kids, or this is the game that you play with all your hyper theoretically grown up friends.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Like, I'm sorry, like you, me, and Hagen playing this game, or Terry too. This could get
Terry, Jesse.
yeah.
Jesse. Yeah.
Oh, that's bad. That's terrible.
I think maybe Jesse should run this game.
I was going to say, we have to get somebody that's regulated to run this game, right? Like we can't have another ADHDer running this. It can't be that way.
I know that might be the only way they can keep up with it. And
the art is really cute in this too.
It is. That is some totally not Disney stuff.
No, great. That's great. Oh.
Yeah, that might get. I think they just recently bought that one.
and you can be a flying squirrel.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. We're so excited about the game. We are so excited about the game.
Same here. I'm very excited to see the reactions to it.
Yeah, and as always, links to everything mentioned are in the show notes. Patreon, Discord, Facebook, Twitter. If you can't support us on Patreon, give us a like on whatever app you're listening to us to. Send us to a friend, come join the Discord at the very least. And as always, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @andrpgs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.